Hello and welcome to the Fallout Leftovers video. This is everything I either wanted to talk about in Fallout in Analysis, but cut for time. Yeah, I cut things for time. You're welcome. Or this is just things I couldn't find time to talk about, or didn't think to talk about, or were completely irrelevant to the conversation, and thus are now in their own video. These are all unscripted, completely ad-libbed, recorded at various times a day, in various locations. The mic audio might fluctuate between clips. That's because some of these are recorded on my phone, some aren't. Some of them are recorded while I'm driving, some are when I'm parked, some are at my normal mic. Again, entirely unscripted, and I don't know exactly when all these are being recorded. They're being recorded over the course of several days as I think about them. So it's gonna jump around from topic to topic. Check the description. I've included timestamps for each individual topic if you want to see my thoughts on a particular element of Fallout's world. I think that's enough introduction, though. Enjoy the video. This is Fallout Leftovers, and we are going to begin with probably the most obvious question that's on people's minds. No, I don't hate Fallout, and more importantly, I don't even hate Fallout 4. The two games that I hold the most dislike for in the Fallout series that get talked about extensively in the video, because I mentioned Brotherhood and I mentioned Tactics, and I mentioned Shelter, but I don't have any opinion about two of those three, and I don't like Shelter, but Shelter's a mobile game, so that's whatever. But of the mainline Fallouts, the two I think I dislike the most are Fallout 3, which still has decent quests. I just feel like everything's kind of a little too bare bones, and I guess it did a good job at being a reboot or reigniting interest in the series, so I can't hate it. I can think it's not a great game, but you know, it's where a lot of people in the Fallout fandom got their start with Fallout. Even people who, you know, love the original games to death. And 76. And the thing I hate with 76 is its online component. If that game was, you know, a single-player title, you know, if I could play it offline, I don't need an internet connection, and we removed stuff like, you know, the camp and the microtransactions, the repair and scrap kits, nuclear winter, raids, daily events. Well, no, keep the daily events. And like the randomization of weapon mods. So, you know, if we remove all of the multiplayer and online aspects of 76, 76 isn't bad. You know, again, I've sung, you know, I will sing the praises of the series and even mention, you know, Fallout 4. It's a completely fine game. I totally understand people who really like Fallout 4. I will say, though, that just liking Fallout 4 isn't even the full scope of the Fallout world. It barely gets you anywhere. And I just I hope that Fallout in Analysis gets people to look more extensively into the world of Fallout. And I hope people come to appreciate what the games were doing in the DOS days. And that doesn't need to impair your ability to like Fallout 4. Even after making Fallout in Analysis, I think Fallout 4 is a fun world to explore, and the combat feels alright. You know, that game is heavily focused on combat, and for what it does pretty well. You know, the gunplay is pretty satisfying, the reloads are well animated, the weapons in general are well animated. But for what Fallout 4 sets out to do, it does pretty well. You know, weapons are well animated, the irons aren't an afterthought. Weapon modding, this is probably my favorite game in terms of weapon mods, save for maybe H3 VR. But you know, that's a VR game with a whole other level of physicality to it. So, you know, obviously, you know, a 2D game can't compare to that sort of depth and complexity. But there's just like such a great quantity and quality of weapon modification in Fallout 4. I think there's some places in every aspect of Fallout 4 that it can be improved, save for maybe the soundtrack. Ian Zero's music is great. Diamond City Radio is fantastic. The classical music that Bethesda's put in every Fallout game, it's all pretty good. The soundtrack-wise, games are alright. There's nothing really inoffensive. There's nothing really offensive with the soundtrack. It doesn't sound bad, it's not like really loud or even really quiet. It complements Fallout well. But, character animation is kind of inconsistent and all over the place. The game's plot is really dumb. All of the factions are unlikable, in my opinion. The game's economy is weighted way too heavily in your favor. But at the same time, I don't think removing the amount of caps helps in any way. I don't think the 76 approach helps in that regard. I feel like what might help is limiting the amount of stuff you can get from vendors, and then making, health items like stim packs and Radaway rarer drops in the world. That might help, but I don't know if that is a solution. There's a lot of really obvious weapon mods missing from Fallout 4. For starters, a wooden stock for the AK. There's all sorts of other stocks. There's stocks based on, like, the Drugnov sniper rifle. You can get a shovel handle for a stock because a Bethesda team member was on a gun forum, and he saw that, and he thought it was funny, so it's in the game. You can get, I believe, a wire stock, and then you can get no stock. But there is no just straight-up wooden sloped stock, like an actual Kalashnikov stock. So, that's strange. And then, a gripe that's bigger than it should be, all the weapons are facing the wrong direction. Every gun in Fallout 4 that isn't ambidextrous is a left-handed firearm. And I talked that somewhere in this Leftovers video, so I'm not going to dwell on that too much here. But Fallout 4 is a good game, but each of its individual components could be better. That's ultimately my stance on Fallout 4. Its adherence to the world and lore of Fallout is lackluster. The story it presents outside of that world is anemic and confusing. The factions all have very unclear goals and are very much centered around whatever you want to do. And it just doesn't feel like anybody has any agency in Fallout 4. But if you just want to run around like an urban area and shoot some psycho people with guns and collect stuff from them, and you don't want to give Gearbox money, Fallout 4 exists, and it's fine. Fallout 3 is a fine reboot, but I don't think it stands as a Fallout game. I think a lot of people would agree with that caveat. There really isn't anything wrong with Fallout 3, other than they barely did any research as to what makes Fallout Fallout. They just kind of went, okay, here's some faction names, here's some major ideas, some major groups of characters, and go. It reads like fanfiction. It reads like bad fanfiction. It's got the Enclave because you need to have the Enclave. It's got the Brotherhood of Steel because you need the Brotherhood of Steel. Never mind the fact that the Brotherhood of Steel really isn't the Brotherhood of Steel in that game. It's got super mutants because you need to have super mutants. And then again, 76, its worst problems are that it's an online-enabled game, and it's designed like an online-enabled game. Fallout 76 was designed similarly to 4, in terms of, how you get weapon mods. You can keep that weird perk system, I guess it's fine. But in terms of how you get weapon mods, what the camp is, how fast travel works, and the in-game economy. If it was designed that way first, and then an online component was added to it, it'd be completely fine. A totally fine game. Fast travel doesn't need to cost caps. That's my biggest gripe with 76. Because that's what makes that game very, very slow. Fallout 76 just goes on and on and on, because you need to wander like halfway across the map for anything. And you could fast travel, but that costs caps, and caps are hard to come by. If it was designed like a single-player game, and then an online multiplayer component was added to it, but you could still play it offline in single-player, that would be fine. I would be 100% cool with it. I would probably play it. Like, period. I bought it in July. I played it for a little bit, and then that was that. I got the footage I needed. What footage I couldn't get, I got from somewhere else, and the video exists. And I uninstalled 76 as soon as I started playing Fallout 4. And then the DOS games, my biggest issue with the DOS games is I just don't have the patience for turn-based combat. It's interesting. I think what that game needs is, it needs a remake. Fallouts 1 and 2 need a remake, and I don't want it in the style of Fallouts 3 or 4. I think they should preserve like the turn-based combat and, you know, the menu-based like dialogue and barter system, but streamline it. Maybe it doesn't need to be an isometric game. That one I'm not sure. But I don't think I want it to be like first or third hybrid. Like, I don't want like an FPS or a third-person shooter type camera. Maybe kind of modernize it the same way like The Sims 2 modernized The Sims 1. Like, that was an isometric game. And that had, you know, that same sort of like cut away at the walls to look inside of a building view. And, you know, you clicked the sim and you clicked where you wanted them to go to tell them to do things. Maybe, like, you could do it Sims 2 in the GameCube style, where it's a free rotating camera where you can kind of look around the area. Your character you control with, like, a control stick, or, you know, WAS and D. And when you get into combat situations, rather than, you know, right-click your weapon to switch how you want to use your weapon, left-click your weapon to then click whatever enemies you want to fight, you know, right-click out in the world to switch between, you know, inspect and, you know, shoot. Maybe it could just be, you know, for like talking console controls, you know, you could use the bumpers to switch between different types of attacks you have available to you. You can use the D-pad to switch between, you know, moving your character, inspecting the environment, and attacking. When you want to do a targeted shot, it's the default for a weapon, and each of the different places you can target has a different AP cost. Or you can just fire at the enemy for a lower cost, but less damage. Make reloading just a single button press instead of digging around in menus. Make using stim packs or other healing items work in a similar fashion. I think a streamlining like that, where you keep the core gameplay but make it more accessible, is what Fallouts 1 and 2 really need. You know, they're fine games. Fallout series on the whole, I still like pretty much every game I talked about. There are games I'm a little more critical of now. Fallout 2 is the big one. I'd never played Fallout 2. And it's kind of ridiculous, like, just how many slurs are in Fallout 2. There's quite a lot of them. There's more of them than there should be. And how many there should be is 0. If I had to rank 3, 4 in New Vegas, it's honestly that order but backwards. New Vegas is the best. I feel like that one's the most self-contained. And I feel like that one is the most interesting, especially if you can get the Ultimate Edition. Its DLCs are really interesting. They tell a whole cohesive story, which I appreciate. And on the whole, it's a great game. Fallout 4 is the next best one, and it's completely different. You can't approach Fallout 4 like New Vegas. They are kind of two completely different beasts from the ground up. Fallout 4 is much more combat-oriented. That one is much less about character. It's less about the character of the world and the character of the environment, and more about specific characters. Nate, Nora, Preston, Desdemona, Maxon, and Father. Those are really the characters Fallout 4 is about. And if you play Far Harbor, Nick Valentine. Actually, while I'm here, I think, honestly, Far Harbor, I don't want to call it a better DLC than any of the New Vegas ones. I would still say Lonesome Road and Old World Blues and Dead Money are all better than Far Harbor, but Far Harbor is at the very least more fun than Honest Hearts, and longer, and adds more to the world of Fallout. Honest Hearts is more about Caesar's Legion, and I can't give a toss about Caesar's Legion. I didn't do it in the footage I needed for this video, because that would have been just a whole lot of unnecessary extraneous work. But in all my playthroughs of Fallout New Vegas, I always make a pilgrimage to Cottonwood Cove to blast Caesar's head off. Last time I played it, I did that with the battle rifle, the M1 Garand. Previous time before that, my first time playing through the game, I did it with Ballistic Fist. It's fun. It's fun to tear that guy in half because he deserves it. And then Fallout 3 is the weakest. Unless you include 76. Again, like 76 offline would be better than 4 because the Wastelanders like DLC actually like tells a pretty decent story. And it's just, you know, it's a big fun map. It's got a lot of really cool details and like scenes all over it. So I think 76 Wastelanders offline with none of the multiplayer online only trappings, I think that would be my second favorite Fallout game. Unfortunately, it's attached to the main Fallout 76 story, which is attached to a disgusting online only bleh. So it and Fallout 3 kind of tango back and forth with whether or not they want to be my least favorite Fallout. I think ultimately 3 wins out and 76 kind of falls down the stairs. But even then, like, I still like the world of Fallout 76. I think it has potential to be a fun game. But, you know, the whole games as a service thing is weighing it down. You know, I'm somebody who, when a game is just average, I would give it a 5 out of 10. That's why I don't do numeric ratings on the channel. Because there would be a lot of games that I would give between a 5 and a 7. And a lot of people would ask, what's wrong with me? So I don't do that. I don't think I could give any of the Fallout games... Well, hold on. Let's give them numeric ratings. New Vegas is definitely like a 9.5, 9 3/4. Fallout 4 is like a 7.5. You know, a C, a mid-C. We can't use the American grading system because that's why people have the weird conniptions over a game getting like a 6 out of 10. Because a 6 out of 10, like a 60%, is a failing grade. But, you know, Fallout 4 is like 3/4 of a good game weighed down by a quarter of, you know, despair. Fallout 3, I would give, for 2009, probably a 7.5. Like, looking back now, probably like a 6.5. I think what it did for role-playing games in 2009 is fine. I think it caused some... It kind of caused the beginning of the end for the traditional, like, CRPG experience in some respect. Because now, like, all these RPGs are, you know, hack and slash and an RPG, or an FPS and an RPG. And I think between Fallout 3 and Borderlands, they kind of share equal blame for that. 76 would be the lowest I'd give a game, and it's like a 6 or a 5.5. You know, still an above average title. It looks nice, and the world is, you know, decent. The music's great. It's just the original story is dumb. The Wastelanders story is all right. The Battle Royale is pointless, and all of its online games as a service fluff is unnecessary. I've played worse. I even mention in the video, I mention American McGee's Grimm. American McGee's Grimm sucks. It's... It oversimplifies what it's even trying to talk about. And for the year it ran, it even realized that, and it ends. If you played, I believe it's if you played all the episodes, you got like a bonus ending where Grimm realizes that what he's done is exactly how people whitewashed his stories long ago, just in the other direction. And he laments that, but there's nothing he can do about it, because they canceled that game. It was live service before live service. It was an episodic series that after the final episode came out, they pulled from the marketplace. You can look at it on Game Tap for like a year and a half. It was experimental. Everything American McGee's done has been super experimental. That's why, he made a bunch of Doom 2 levels. That's why his first name is fucking American. And I don't hold contempt, because the games industry is hard. I'm sure that what they'd set out to make wasn't this, overly meticulous, like, scrub the area platformer. I'm sure they wanted to make a chaotic, nightmarish platformer. I mean, I guess the Alice series is kind of that. This is just kind of like a kiddie, oversimplified version of that. And I imagine it was very hard to come up with how do you spread chaos mechanically. And that's why they kind of took the Mario Sunshine approach. But that doesn't stop the fact that, like, critically, like, Game Press gave that game, like, a 5 out of 10, consistently. And if they're giving it a 5 out of 10, what am I going to give it? I don't know, I never got to play it, because the game freaking disappeared in, like, 2010, you can't get it anymore. I've rambled on long enough. The fact of the matter is, before you listen to any of the other leftovers, and as you look back on Fallout and Analysis, do know I love this series, and I love the games. I actually intend to, one day, play through Fallout 4 all over again, with the Fallout 4 New Vegas, skills and traits, menu and systems. I want to see if skill checks change Fallout 4. I don't imagine it will a lot, but I do want to see that. And, of course, I had a whole bunch of Fallout 4 mods, and I'll continue to grab mods, because Fallout 4 is a cool sandbox for people to make stuff like that. I kept it pretty simple. I think I only had the Garand, I had the Bozar, I had the 1911. There were a whole lot of other mods I could have gotten. I could have gotten the G11. I'll put it that way. So I hope you listen to the rest of Fallout Leftovers. Again, there will be more on Patreon, so if you are interested in listening to everything I have to say, consider dropping a couple bucks to the patron. Cutting Room tier and above will get access to that second half of this video. That will run you about $3. So for the cost of like 2 McChickens, you can listen to another 2 hours of what I have to say. Thank you, and enjoy the show. This is Fallout Leftovers. I almost forgot the name of this thing. I've only been recording it for like a month. And today, you got to see pretty much everything I played in all of these Fallout games. But it's probably time that you know what I didn't play. And if you watch the video, it's probably pretty easy to figure out where the gaps in the video are. So let's start in the order that I actually played the games. Fallout 76, I did not play anything from Watoga on. And the reason for that is because of how Fallout 76 worked at the time that I recorded. It doesn't work like this anymore. But the higher the average player level in a region of the map is, the higher the enemy levels. Watoga is located in the Cranberry Bog. That is where the Brotherhood of Steel and the Enclave quest lines exist. And you need to complete both of those to launch the nuke. But the reason high-level players hang out at the Cranberry Bog is because of the Queen's Scorch Beast, the final boss of the main campaign. New players are inevitably going to make it to that point in the game, and it's going to ask them to nuke that location in the Cranberry Bog, because that's how you fight the Queen's Scorch Beast, and that's how you beat the game. High-level players hang out in that area because then they can keep refighting the Queen's Scorch Beast to get legendaries. You can then trade those legendaries in for points. Those points can then be spent on other legendaries. So they love to hang out in that area. in great numbers, which causes the enemy level to skyrocket. I was level 30 going into Watoga. The whole rest of the game, I was fighting enemies at most about 5 levels above my level. So when I was in, the mire, which is just north of the cranberry bog, the enemies I was fighting were, level 30 to level 40. The moment I stepped foot in Watoga, I was getting hounded by tons of level 65 enemies. And it was just impossible to make any progress. I unfortunately don't have any footage of that because, again, I was waiting until I got to, the Enclave quest line to start recording 76 again. I recorded a bit of each of the regions. I recorded, my first couple hours with the game. I recorded, best I could, a nuke going off. It was on the other side of a mountain, so I didn't see it, but I heard it. I recorded a little bit of the Raider quest line, and then I recorded the Free States. I was waiting until I got to the Enclave to start recording again, because I didn't think there'd be much to talk about with, Watoga, or the Brotherhood of Steel. And as a result, you don't get to see much footage of me fighting ridiculously bullet-spongy enemies that deal a whole lot of damage and move faster than you do. I legitimately ran out of ammo in my last play session, and then a Scorched Beast started dive bombing me. And I noped right out of that game and started playing Fallout 4. As for Fallout 4, I did not play Nuka World or any of the building quest lines. I only played Far Harbor. And the reason is Nuka World is bad. It is legitimately awful. If you play Nuka World correctly, you can no longer side with the Minutemen. If the Brotherhood of Steel hates you, the S2 hates you, and the Railroad hates you, you have actually kind of prevented yourself from being able to complete Fallout 4. I believe at the very least, you have to wipe out the Raider encampments that you've set up in the Commonwealth, and there is a chance that you can work with Preston again. Otherwise, I believe he, like any other companion, when his affinity for you hits 0, he leaves forever. And if you try to track him down, he will fight you. So, I do believe you actually can get yourself into a situation where you've made Fallout 4 unwinnable if you play it correctly. And your other option, if you don't want to do that, is to kill every single Raider. And there's like 200 of them. There is no way in hell that is, fun. There's no way to make that enjoyable. Because as cool as Fallout 4's combat is relative to other Fallout games, it doesn't do hordes well. It doesn't do them well at all. Raiders deal a lot of damage. They have high-powered rifles. They are bullet-spongy. And I believe there is power-armored Raiders, or there are powered-armored Raiders, I do believe, in Nuka World, which just gives them that much more health and that much more armor. And then I didn't play Wasteland Workshop, Contraption Workshop, Vault Tech Workshop, even though that one has a quest line, or Automatron, even though that one has a quest line. I've played the Automatron quest line. It's okay. But again, honestly, that entire DLC's only redeeming quality is putting legs on Codsworth, or building, sentry bots and protectrons to run your supply lines, because it's way easier. And then I didn't play Vault Tech Workshop because it has a plot, but it is kind of just Fallout Shelter grafted into Fallout 4. You perform experiments. They are mostly just wacky. One of them is like, you can set up a soda fountain. Oh no, the soda's drugged. And now, you're, it increases the happiness in your settlement tremendously. But then your generic NPCs kind of walk around talking about how they can taste colors, or, how they're feeling groovy or stuff. It's exactly that. It's not worth writing home about at all. Well, that's another thing I didn't play with Fallout 76. I did not play the Battle Royale segment. No Battle Royale. Forgot to mention that. And I haven't played the game since. So that was in what? July? Yeah, that was July. July into the very beginning of August. Haven't played it since. I don't know if I will finish it. I don't know if it's worth it. If I do go back, I kind of just want to complete Watoga, because Watoga was cool. And that's about it. No, the Vault-Tec Workshop doesn't actually add anything meaningful to the world of Fallout or Fallout 4, and so it's not really worth playing. And the other two are literally just items. Moving on to Fallout 3. The only DLC I played this time around was Broken Steel. The only other DLC that I've played outside of that was I beat Point Lookout. I started playing Operation Anchorage back in 2013 or 2014. Gave up. I just didn't like it. It was just really linear, and combat in Gamebryo sucks. I also feel the same way about Lonesome Road. It's a really cool concept, and its environments are amazing. But the actual, fighting high-level enemies and a whole bunch of them constantly, it sucks. It really sucks. I also played Mothership Zeta. I played that. I think I played that twice. That one's really good. You get a whole bunch of overpowered weapons, thousands of ammo points for them. I don't know what to call them. They're not energy cells. They're like alien cells. You get thousands of them, and overpowered weapons that reload super quick and deal a whole lot of damage, and then a bunch of really, really phenomenal healing items. And that's it. That's the only reason to play the DLC, is to break all of the other DLCs that you can take your items into. Broken Steel included. I also don't play most of Fallout 3. I kind of just go straight for Vault 112. So I didn't play, the quests where, Colin Moriarty points you in the direction of Galaxy News Radio. Three Dog points you in the direction of, I don't remember what, the Citadel? Yeah, the Citadel. And then it's like, look for, the list of vaults, and then you're supposed to go to, each vault or something. I don't remember. Because I don't play that deal. I don't play Fallout 3 correctly. New Vegas. I didn't play Dead Money. And it's because, one, Dead Money is the longest DLC. It's 5 or 6 hours. Two, everybody I've talked to either really, really loves Dead Money. They could go on about how, it expands the gameplay of the Gamebryo engine to new heights. It really proves it can do survival horror and do it well. The enemies are very smartly designed. The characters are very fleshed out. The world building is ridiculous and super in-depth. And it brings New Vegas to whole new heights of tension and fright that really no other Fallout experience has had. Or they really hate it. They hate the radios and how frustrating it can be to, get around them or destroy them. How often the gameplay devolves into trial and error your first time through. How some of the speech checks actively work against you, and how 100%ing it involves having a very stupid courier, because otherwise you can't talk to dog or God. So, it was a very divisive DLC, from what I've seen. And I just didn't have the time for it. I might, one of these days, if I ever go back to New Vegas, I will play through it, I guarantee it. Because I do want to give it a shot. It was, unfortunately, the other DLCs combined were about as long as Dead Money. Although I say that, I played Old World Blues way longer than I should have. And then Fallouts 1 and 2, I'm going to be completely honest, I didn't play much of. I played maybe the opening 2 hours, and then I used saves to play the rest. And that was 100% time crunch. There was just no way I could commit to playing 2 30-hour RPGs back to back and have the video out when I wanted the video out. Unfortunately, it seems like I probably should have done that because, not for my sake, but because, honestly, it sounds like a lot of people would have rather the video be in 2 pieces. 2 or 3 pieces. Maybe I could have done like Fallout 1 and 2, 3 in New Vegas, 4 in 76. It seems like that probably would have gone over well, or at least better, than doing just a 2-hour, 40-something minute video. Oh well, you know. You learn something new every day. You know, you forget a million things every day. And I'll try to make that one of them. I don't know, there was a lot of compromise in making Fallout an analysis of the video it was. At the time I'm recording this, the video has been out for a week and a day. It has about 1,100 views. I'm gonna be completely honest. It's frustrating because, again, like YouTube still believes I cover that fucking game, the fucking clown game. I don't. I stopped playing that because I got sick of it, and I got sick of the fan base that surrounded it. And then when they were like, "Hey, we gave our game an end. See ya," I was like, "Fucking finally!" And I took that and I ran. And then their other game failed. And then after I'd already run, I'd been gone for 4 or 5 months. And then all of a sudden, people are like, "You better come back. It's got more content. There's so much more to talk about." There fucking isn't. Like, what do you want me to say? It's 3 missions and a whole bunch of cosmetic crap. And the 3 missions reuse bits and pieces from other missions in that game. It's all shit. I feel legitimately sorry for the people that are stuck at that company because they're slapping band-aids on the Titanic is what they're doing. And there's no way that I want to be associated with that anymore because it's going to crash and burn. I would rather move on and, take 1,000 views on a video I worked half a year on than get stuck with a game that's going to get the same 7,000 views from the same 7,000 people that still play that game until the end of time. But, that's that, honestly. What are you going to do? This is Fallout Leftovers, Fallout 76. I want to like Fallout 76. Its main campaign is pants on head stupid. It paints the Enclave in a terrible light, even relative to the other Enclaves, just because their plan isn't fascist or evil or even just misguided but trying to be good. It's just straight up pointless and idiotic. And I honestly think Dick Richardson of the Enclave in Fallout 2 or John Henry Eden and Colonel Autumn in Fallout 3 would have said, no, let's not build FEV horrors to try to raise the DEFCON level to then nuke a country that we already destroyed. It's stupid. It's a really stupid idea. And the game doesn't do any favors in painting it in a good light or even any of the other factions. The only faction in the main campaign that is actually, decent and well-written is the Responders. And it's just because they're first responders. That's literally their shtick, and that's all they needed to do. And they did it. Hooray, good for them. The Wastelanders content, though, I feel like is more really what I want from Fallout. And it's a lot more New Vegas-like than even Fallout 4. Because it's a story about people. It's a story about a treasure. It's the gold in this Fort Knox style encampment. It's Secret Service. It doesn't really have this weird sci-fi-ish, a crazy monster or robot people edge to it that 3 or 4 have. But it's still not my favorite part of the world and story of Fallout 76. Honestly, I really, really was hoping that the game would kind of talk more about the economic and workforce problems of the pre-war world. It's really interesting, and I think even more so because these are protagonists who could have been on that picket line in 2076, 2077, but they aren't anymore. And those picket lines have been destroyed, buried in mountains of ash. Hell, you can get protest signs as a melee weapon. A bunch of the music on the soundtrack on the radio is work-themed. Songs like 16 Tons and Dark as a Dungeon. And it really lends the game this sort of unique identity. I love this sort of, workforce, we're striking, our jobs are getting destroyed by automation, and that same automation is attacking us for wanting to be paid for our labor, or at the very least, wanting a job. It's such a really interesting angle that no other Fallout game ever, not even New Vegas, touches on, that I think is such an important part of a pre-war, heavily, automated world. And it's just there. It's just, environmental clues and nothing else. If Fallout 76 was all that, and it was all, you play as a character who lived in the pre-war world, and now you're stepping foot into the post-nuclear world for the very first time, I think that would have been way more interesting. And actually play up, this is where X used to be, but it's gone now. And, your character has flashbacks to a world they once knew. And you kind of get to actually rebuild America. Not just these ramshackle huts, but actually, reintroduce skills and allow you to level up your building skill to then produce higher quality walls and floors and reclaim these areas that have been destroyed. There's a strip mall in one of the parts of the map. It's near a gas station, but it just is just a monster hut. That's not a good word for it. It's just a bunch of ghouls. Maybe one Wendigo. But, you can't go in there with a couple of your buddies and build generators and build lights and make it a functioning mall again. If Fallout 76 was more like that, where you broke off into small groups and turned the clock back 30 years on a part of the world, and, bigger areas like Charleston. I think Charleston's in the game. Yeah, Charleston is definitely in the game. I'm also thinking of, it's got the personal transport. Those sorts of areas would be harder to reclaim and would cost way more resources. But if you can reclaim them and make them habitable again, then you get tons of bonuses. NPCs move in, they generate hundreds and thousands of caps in trading, they generate food and water, they run the generators, they keep things safe. That is the 76 we kind of should have had. And that's not the 76 we have. All the labor and economic problems of the post-war world mean nothing. The money is literally just called pre-war money, even though it should just be called money, because these people knew the pre-war world. That should be the currency, not bottle caps. This would be the second Fallout game ever to let you just use a regular old dollar for doing trades in. The first being Fallout 2. And it would have given 76, more of its own identity. But again, Bethesda is just too afraid to step away from, the iconic elements of Fallout. And it's a shame, because Fallout 2 and New Vegas step away from those iconic elements. People love them for it. In a better world, we would have gotten that sort of 76, and we didn't. This is Fallout Leftovers Music. Music soothes a savage beast, or in this case, a savage fight. Moving on. Music. The Fallout games, even just outside of Mark Morgan and Enon Zur's soundtracks, which they're good. Enon Zur is a little more good than Mark Morgan's, in my opinion. I don't know. I like the sad synths, or the sad strings. I like the sad strings more than I like banging on a drum. Mark Morgan sure can beat on that little jungle drum. Go you. But I'm talking about the licensed music of the Fallout world. It's a really good soundtrack. I think I actually like the licensed music in Fallout 3 New Vegas for 76 more than I like other licensed music in games. The soundtracks in Tony Hawk and Grand Theft Auto were fine, but come on. The music in Fallout... I'm just going to talk about 76, because 76 contains almost all the same music from the other games. It's great. It's fantastic. It covers a wide range of genres, even for the 1950s, 1960s. You've got your more folksy music. 76 contains a lot of songs that I swear to God were in Fallout New Vegas on Radio New Vegas, and they aren't. So, what was it? Too Many Heartaches? No. The Wrong Highway. I thought that one was on Radio New Vegas. I'm like, oh, that's neat of them to put this song from New Vegas in the game. It's not in New Vegas. But you got folksy music. You have some rockabilly, some easy listening, it's not really swing. Like mambo, bossa nova stuff. A lot of that sort of stuff. And it's all really good. Cole Porter, a song from a musical. The only song from that musical in Fallout. And it's just there. As anything goes. I love it. I think I like New Vegas' soundtrack more, but I love both of them equally. They kind of go for quality over quantity. Tony Hawk and Grand Theft Auto contain dozens and dozens and dozens of songs. And Grand Theft Auto contains like 24 radio stations now. But a lot of it is not stuff I regularly listen to. And I think both games kind of fell in the trap of taking, contemporary music and just playing it. So, I get bored of Grand Theft Auto soundtrack because it's all top 40 stuff I don't listen to. There's other channels that aren't that. There's a country channel and there's a couple other channels. But Fallout kind of juxtaposes this, cheery, wide-eyed vision of the past with kind of this gruesome depravity of the future. And they kind of pair very nicely, and they kind of offset each other. The more wholesome lyrics of those songs take on new meanings, given what you're doing in Fallout. You could potentially argue that Butcher Pete is just a guy who cuts people up. That's not helping my case. Anything Goes. There we go. Anything Goes is... It's about the Great Depression. Everything's changed, The world's gone mad today, good's bad today, black's white today, day is night today, and that gent today you gave a cent today once had several chateaus. Cole Porter is complaining about things that for the 1920s, 1930s were legitimate complaints. We are a long way from that. And I love the juxtaposition. And it makes the more tense scenes in Fallout 3, 4, 76. It really cuts the edge down, and that helps me play the games. That's why they're almost all muted in Fallout and Analysis, because god dang, I can't play this game with the default soundtrack. It does... it uneases me a little too much. But I do have a couple comments. First of all, it's weird that I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire, maybe, and It's All Over But the Crying have been in every game from 3 on, from when they use that song in a Fallout. So, they maybe appears on 3, 4, and 76's soundtracks. I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire appears in both. It's All Over But the Crying starts in 4 and continues into 76. First of all, maybe in 76 is a different pitch, and it's actually slowed down. I don't know why. It sounds like a completely different master, and I don't know why that's the case, because the one that's used in Fallout 1 is the one they used in 3 and 4. So maybe it was just a botched master. I asked on the forums, and nobody ever answered me. Nobody even responded, so I have no idea. But the thing that bothers me, and it bothers me more than it should, and I'm well aware, I sincerely feel like Louis Armstrong's A Kiss to Build a Dream On should be on the radio. One is a nod to Fallout 2, and two, it's just a good song. Maybe the next Fallout game can open with, like, Hello Dolly. That'd be neat. Also, I love going on to Nexus mods and looking at all the radio mods, because all of them contain just insane songs. A bunch of them contained, what's it called? Mr. Sandman from the Quartets. And it made it into 76, which was cool. And it's actually the first song that plays on Appalachia Radio when you leave the vault in Fallout 76. At least it was for me. I want to say it probably is for everybody, because Fallout 3 has a special radio announcement from 3Dog when you first turn on the radio. If you turn on the radio right as soon as you leave Vault 101, 3Dog is wrapping up a story about somebody leaving the vault. And that somebody is Liam Neeson. It's not you. Although he does talk about you after a couple, like, in-game hours or an in-game day or so. But Mr. Sandman made it in, and it's a lot of fun. But, god damn it, one of them contains I Like Bananas Because They Have No Bones. And now I really want that in a Fallout game. It's a great song. Kind of. No, it's great. But one thing that does bother me about the music in Fallouts in general is music kind of stops at like 1960 something. In New Vegas, it stops at like 2004, 2008, because, Stars of the Midnight Ranger or something? I definitely got the name wrong. That song was recorded in like 2008. And then there was another song that came out in like 1999 or 2000. But that's all folk music, and folk music doesn't change. That's the point of folk music. And, that fits the tone of New Vegas. And it does kind of give the world a more contemporary edge, one way or the other. And then you've also got, Josh Sawyer wrote, like, The Streets of New Reno and things like that. But I wish the Fallout games had, kind of like retro covers of more recent songs. Get the guy who did the music for Bioshock Infinite. The cover of Shiny Happy People and Everybody Wants to Rule the World from that game are amazing. I love those covers. I love them actually more than I love the original songs. And there's just tons of good covers in that game, period. God Only Knows is the one I think everybody is aware of. They're phenomenal tracks. And they fit the world perfectly, but they also kind of advance the world a little bit, and they kind of tell you about the world subconsciously, because Bioshock Infinite is set in 1912, and to hear a song from like the 1980s in that world kind of already clues you into something's happened here, some time travel fuckness has happened, and it's great. But in the world of Fallout, that also kind of makes sense, because, like, if we do, like, a retro-style cover of, Space Oddity, or I just had one. I had what I thought was a good one. Oh, Signs. Signs was the one I was thinking of. Or Waiting on the World to Change. If we got, like, 50s or 60s-esque, or even, like, Bob Crosby-style covers of those songs in a newer Fallout game, or even just original songs. Something like the Make-Believes from We Happy Few. Gearbox, or Compulsion, rather, they're a way smaller team than Bethesda, but they wrote their own EP for that game. And they performed it in the style of 60s rock, because that game's set in like 1964, or 1965 maybe. If Bethesda could do something like that, and they did that a little bit with 76, but those were more like... they were newer songs than their usual cutoff, but they're older, newer songs. Ring of Fire's from like the 70s, I believe, or maybe the 80s. I don't think the 80s, actually. I want to say it was like early 70s. And then John Denver's Country Roads. But if they did more contemporary stuff in that kind of older style, I'd love it. Also, one last comment about 76. Their cover of Ring of Fire is not great. I get why it's so high energy, because it's trying to sell their Battle Royale mode. But it sounds way too new. It doesn't sound like it's from, the world of Fallout. Their Take Me Home Country Roads cover does sound timeless. I'll give it that. Their cover of Country Roads is a timeless one. I love it a lot. And not just because it's become this like shorthand for chaos on the internet. Thank you, RT. But their Ring of Fire cover is just like if you went to like a folk music, not even really a folk music, like a country music festival now and heard that perform now, you'd be like, yeah. It doesn't sound retro. It's kind of like I don't know how to word this. I would rather they keep that one in the Battle Royale mode, and then on the radio, either Johnny Cash's version or just a lower energy cover of Ring of Fire. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. Because, like, you can tell when it's clearly, like, put together in a recording studio versus it's a whole band playing together. Because in those times, it was usually a whole band playing together. I don't know. The music in the Fallout world is interesting and it's fun to talk about. And I hope whatever is next for Fallout, it at least sounds good. That's not an admission that I'll buy it just because it's got a nice soundtrack. But, you know, I'd browse the wiki. This is Fallout Leftovers ranking the Radio DJs. I think Travis is my favorite, followed by Julie from Appalachia Radio, Mr. New Vegas. Three Dog is probably my least favorite. I haven't listened to Black Mountain Radio. That's it. And that'll do it for part 1 of Fallout Leftovers. The next part will contain a lot of stuff like the New Vegas post-game, Skyrim, Fallout Tactics, Ghouls, the speech skill. And I do want to also cover things like the game's iconic elements, and even Fallout and analysis itself. So if you would like to hear about those sorts of topics, subscribe, hit that bell thingy, watch some other videos, watch Fallout and analysis. Share it with people. Share it with a lot of people. If it gets to 2,000 views, I will buy that font. Ooh, it's ugly, isn't it? Also, if you'd like to hear me talk about things like weapons, idealism, a video like this I tried to make in 2014, Ron Perlman, the Amazon series, and how Fallout as a series is like Monopoly as a board game, consider donating to the Patreon. I'll try to have a patron-exclusive Fallout Leftovers video up sometime by December. But I think that'll be it for me for right now. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a good day. See you around. See you around is how I end things on this channel. I forgot that for a moment.